I'm going to call the meeting of the Study Commission for Monday, February 20, 2014 to order on 6:02 p.m. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Duncan?
Here.
Ms. Eccles? Here. Mr. Clarence?
Here.
Ms. Green? Here. Mr. Kutz?
Here.
Vice Chairman Fiore?
Here.
Chairman Hippo?
here. Linda circulated the meeting minutes for January 27, 2014 meeting by electronic mail. I believe everyone received those today. Does anyone want to make a motion to approve those?
So moved.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion concerning those minutes? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. We are on public comment. I skipped that. I apologize. Any member of the public that wishes to comment on any part of the meeting agenda or any items that we'll be discussing this evening, now's your opportunity. Say aye. These other minutes reflect that there was nobody engaging in that opportunity. We are on our ongoing work with the mayor and city manager. I'm not sure you left anything formal, but I think Richard gave us this outline. Are we going to pursue that, or does somebody else have a suggestion they want to bring to the group this time?
Maybe after the outline. I did bring something along that Mayor Scherr contributed, and it discusses salaries and it discusses a description of what the job of mayor really should be. And maybe just for most modern cities, a mayor serves as the highest government office liaison.
Available in service at Station 310.
Just turn it on the volume.
Where?
The black one. The black button. Thanks.
He serves as the figurehead and primary policy maker. While legislative decisions are largely delegated to councils and ballot initiatives, the mayor is the primary point of contact for decisions and policies ranging from finance, education, safety, and the like. While the job functions and the path to mayoralty depends on the city, legislative statutes and bylaws, the function of a mayor is typically standardized. In most cases, after being elected, oftentimes a mayor serves a term of 4 years. After they've expired, a mayor can choose, and with the voters willing, serve an unlimited number of terms. The path to the mayor's office usually consists of winning the office in a general election with voters deciding the best candidate. The qualifications, however, may differ. The majority are elected with a solid educational background, including a bachelor's, or in the case of a small city's associate's degree, as well as a significant work in the public sector before consideration. The primary strength of the mayor and mayoral candidates are public speaking, charisma, honesty, and integrity, among others. A mayor must also be diplomatic, as much of the job consists of listening and deciding among many equal-sounding alternatives. Though not elected without a council of aides to help in decision-making, the mayor must make decisions with significant implications and ramifications which affect many people. A typical day for the mayor depends on the size of his constituency. Mayors presiding over smaller communities may have less decisions and more downtime, while mayors of larger cities are consistently busy with public relations. Though not without perks, the job of holding the highest office of the city is demanding, and its stringent qualifications and stiff competition makes it viable to only the most motivated and qualified individuals. And with that, he attached a median salary of about $50,000 nationwide, with a range going from $24,000 all the way up to $100,000. That was a contribution by former Mayor Scherr. Anybody like to see this?
I think we should pass our thanks on him. Do you know the source of that sort of definition, the paragraph portion you read at all?
Well, he did it under job search, and easy. He simply did Google and came up with his pay scale. And if you'd like to see it, Wayne, here's your copy.
No, that was a question, I just was wondering what the source was.
Payscale.com.
Scale.com.
Payscale.com.
All right, so it's a sort of,
Yeah,
it's an
I've
internet.
seen it before for any type of job position.
My only other observation I'd want to offer is we have to address the salary issue, whether we're doing it directly or investing that in council or how that'll start. But none of this to me makes a whole lot of sense unless we're just comparing it to other third-class cities in Pennsylvania. I mean, to the extent that's nationwide, at the end of the day, we're playing under a certain set of rules and comparing ourselves as best we possibly can to other entities. So just like it doesn't make sense to compare it to Philadelphia or Pittsburgh, doesn't to me make sense to compare it to any smaller cities or significantly smaller cities or anybody outside of Pennsylvania. So that's my only thought on that.
I have a couple comments before we go on to Richard's spreadsheet, which I think is going to be a very worthwhile endeavor. In looking at the additional charters we were provided, and I didn't read all of them front to back, but I did read the mayor and to some degree the city manager section of each of them. And the path that we somewhat chose last week, I think, sets us on a road that is very different than anything that we had before us. I know that in some of our previous discussions, we said, let's pick a charter that is something we want to model after and then tweak it to meet what we think is necessary for the city of Altoona. In reading a lot of these, we're sort of in uncharted waters with having a full-time mayor with something more than ceremonial powers, but not an executive mayor. I mean, they're pretty cookie cutter as far as executive go. There's some tweaks. That's probably where more of the fluctuation is on the executive mayor side, in laying out exactly defining what the powers of the mayor are. But all the ceremonial mayors pretty much read word for word on all of them. And I think it'll be interesting to see where our discussion goes on the individual powers, because most of them do not delve that far into defining the powers of the mayor. I mean, it's mostly, here's the ceremonial part of it, and then everything else is, he's a part of city council, therefore that's all part of city council. So, I just would caution that, in trying, I've been trying to sort of match up, okay, this is a good one that sort of gives a basis of what we've talked about, and I was unable to define that as such at this point.
On limited to this particular chapter. I mean,
Correct. Oh yeah, no, I agree. In the other chapters, I think that there's a lot of synergies that exist with probably where we'll head on those. But as far as the mayor, city manager, council, what the role and interplay between those three agencies, they are all sort of defined either ceremonial mayor, part of council, or executive branch, or the two examples. I guess there's one more example now of a mayor who is part, both executive mayor, which one is it?
Pittston,
Pittston is like
Easton,
Easton.
and who else? Is it just Pittston? Okay.
Those are the only two I've seen so far where the mayor is both on council and has executive powers over.
Okay.
Over the.
Yeah, I was thinking Easton was the only one there. Can I?
Yeah.
Okay. I think going through here would be worthwhile. And in fact, what I found as I started looking at all of these, that of course when I wrote this out, I probably had, my own thoughts as I was writing it, and then realized that I had to kind of reflect on most of what I was thinking in this after the tentative decisions we made last week or 2 weeks ago. Because once you set out with the path that we started on 2 weeks ago, it kind of establishes a lot of this, and it does, it creates an interesting situation where we're not, it's not an executive mayor, and so
Yeah, I think
a lot of these positions that you would think of as an executive authority just are not going to apply. And in fact, in some cases, I think it actually gets to where, if we want a full-time mayor and we want to give the mayor some authority beyond what a city council member would be, I think it actually becomes even more problematic, because you can create some division within city council. And
that's where
we're going to get to that really quick as soon as we start getting into some of these.
Yeah, I think that if we pick the executive, it's sort of, okay, how much power do we want to give them? But when you put them on council, it's like, it sort of puts you in that box that it just becomes ceremonial in the end.
Correct.
As we go through the discussion, we can see if there's something we can carve out there, but, my logical deduction is sort of reverted back to, okay, well, if he can't do the executive things, then what does he do if he's there full time?
So
So,
does it make sense to go through this list and then revisit
I think so.
whether we want it?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, and I have one or two questions for you about it before we jump in, then we can just take a look at where we get after you go through the checklist.
Should we have a running tab as we go, so we know, like,
Another issue I had on the list is that in some cases I'm not, we had a lot of people come in and testify, but I don't think we talked about every one of these issues specifically, so I would, in some cases I was sort of reserving my choice as to hear a little bit more about what the current structure is, and whether or not the current structure
Well, I
is
think
working
we
or
got
not working.
plowing through it.
Yeah,
People
I
have
agree.
questions we ask. One of the questions I want to ask you, first of all, thank you. I think this is actually a very nice tool. And it's, how did you put this together? Did you use some sort of framework, read it, or did you just sit
No,
down?
absolutely not. I must say that I put this together partly because I thought we were trying to figure out, what is the job of mayor, council, and manager and all that. And that sort of started this, and I'll be honest about the way it ended, because you'll see some pretty wacky things on page 2.
I saw that. That's fine.
It ended because in talking to people in different places, I started hearing some pretty crazy things. And so I thought, we should probably discuss these things openly. So
And the
that's
only
how it
reason I
ended.
bring it up, and again, I'm very grateful for you doing this, and I think it's very helpful to the group. The only thing that I would hope is that between Larry and Linda and Matt or Councilman or any city staff people leaves here, Janice, if they're seeing a gap of something that you unintentionally didn't think about, or somebody needs to get us saying, hey, you missed an area. So please feel free to speak up. So do we just want to start at one and go through?
But before we begin that, would you be kind enough to review did we agree to things at the last meeting?
The thing that I have that you agree upon is that you'll have a full-time mayor who will be on council, to vote on council, and the manager will be hired and fired by the council, the mayor, who sits on council.
Okay.
All right, well, do you want to run this? Through this?
Well, okay. I think the first one's pretty easy about who we think should pass ordinances. Now, Easton, the reason I said I give a list of like Easton does, they actually give a list of what you can pass an ordinance on and what is forbidden to pass an ordinance on. So I thought that was a really nice section, so I like Easton's thing on that. But I'm imagining that, well, I don't know. I mean, do we think that that's council's job? Okay.
Yes.
And when we're saying that, we're assuming the mayor still would have the vote here
Yeah,
under
yes.
what we're currently talking about.
Right, yeah, so I think some, right, so I think one way to think about that is that's a primary council job. The fact that we decided mayor is part of council, that entails that, and so I don't know that we really need to discuss that separately. Proposed ordinances, I think that's kind of the same thing. The council does that. I thought that it would be nice that the mayor, of course, now the mayor is part of council. I'm not sure if it actually works to differentiate them. But even if the mayor had not been part of council, I would have thought the mayor should have the authority to propose an ordinance and guarantee an up or down vote.
I guess, Larry, can you tell us how that happens now? Is any member of council able to bring a motion to pass an ordinance?
Yes, under third-class city code, council can talk about it, and the mayor's on council. And so they met, and then it's introduced, make it the next meeting, and then it's advertised, and then it's adopted.
And if the city manager wants an ordinance, he needs to get a sponsor on council to bring that?
That's right, it has to go through council.
Does council vote to move an ordinance forward?
Yes,
Just,
someone has to introduce it,
and then it has to be voted upon?
yes.
But if it were the manager's idea, the manager would come to a meeting and say, you know, we've been talking
Right.
about X, Y, Z
Yeah.
issue, here's my idea.
But what if one council person walks into a council meeting and says, I'd like to propose this ordinance? It has to be voted upon.
They can do that, they can propose an ordinance.
And then they can motion that it gets a vote, but they're gonna require 3 other people to motion to
That's
get a vote,
exactly
right?
right.
Well, it'd have to be introduced, and somebody would have to
Doesn't have to be
second
advertised.
the introduction.
It has to be advertised and then voted on at a later date, right?
Right, you don't, you
Sure.
can't get it
Okay,
that day.
sure.
Not
Right.
that night.
Right.
Yeah, but I think this is a situation where if we're not, if we just have the council as defined as the mayor, I can't even imagine a situation where someone else outside of council is demanding that the vote actually occur. If there was an executive mayor, I could imagine that a mayor is gonna wanna insist that the council votes one way or another, but it's irrelevant. It's almost irrelevant at this point, so.
I would imagine if a councilman comes in and throws an ordinance into and introduce this ordinance, the council can say, well, we don't want it advertised. It just never gets to advertisement. I have not seen that happen, because usually it's pretty, they've talked about it and they know what they want to do.
Yeah, well, you gotta count to 4.
Yes,
That's what you're fond of saying.
It's harder than it looks.
Sure. All right. Investigate other branches and departments. I'm imagining that the manager normally does that. I mean, the manager has a responsibility to kind of keep tabs on what all the departments are doing. And so I think that's a normal operation, but I think what this is inferring is that there's a special independent investigation that bypasses the manager, or bypasses, if we had an executive, that would bypass the executive.
Can you see an example of that somewhere in there?
There are, in some of the, a lot of the,
Executive one.
I bet almost all the executive ones say that the council has the right to investigate the mayor, or to investigate
Yeah, I
a department
didn't-
or something like that.
Don't recall it on the sort of council.
The mayor that would do the investigating in the executives.
No, because I think you would be investigating
The
the
checks
mayor, I
and
think that's the whole
balances.
point.
It's the checks and balances in the executive mayor format. I don't know that I saw it much in the council manager.
You're
Right.
suggesting there would be an incident of some kind or something like that that would
Is there any
provoke
precedence
that
from this?
Yeah, and I think that I have heard people not necessarily say they want to be able to do this, but I think I've heard a complaint that with the form that we have right now, that a council member, they can go and sort of ask questions outside of the manager, but they really gonna have to go through manager to do stuff, right?
Yeah. You can't go up to Lee and tell him to do something. If that's what you're referring to.
Well, you can't tell him to do something, but can you go up to Lee and say,
You can ask him.
I want these documents, I want, you
No,
know.
because that's telling him to do something.
Well, you could request a document they're all public documents. Pretty much anything in the fourth floor is public. I can't say no to you or a councilman or a mayor or any person off the street.
Okay.
Public documents are public documents.
Well, we're talking about investigating departments, and I think that's.
I don't know whether it may be documents, it may be email, I don't know. I don't know what that is.
Those are all public too.
Yeah,
You
is
can
it?
see any of my emails anytime. City law.
I know under Tyrone's
Keep another
charter,
email.
we have the ability, council has the ability to issue, and they're a manager, council manager, form of government. Council has the ability to issue subpoenas, do investigations, all that sort of thing, and it may be in the third-class city code. We've never done it, so I can't remember, can't recall for sure,
I
but.
just found at Easton's that there's one where they sort of have a executive branch set up.
Yeah, Tyrone has the same thing.
Well, can we expedite this, ask Larry to look at the third-class city code, then we can take a look at Tyrone, and see if there's other examples, and just revisit this?
Sure.
Sure. Okay, propose the budget. I think here we'd have a real question, because normally that would be a mayor in one branch, and maybe it'd be the manager in this. So what do y'all think that we should be doing there?
Manager.
The manager proposes it?
That's what I had.
Okay. and then it's actually passed by the council. I'm sure we're all there.
Yep.
Councilman Bear.
Incurred debt and levy taxes is that council. Some people I think would put that under the voters as well. So, well, you would put it in that it requires a referendum, and that would be the mechanism.
That's
to
not
put it under
necessarily how it's
voters.
done now.
Well, I personally think that'd be a bad route to
It
go.
would be very
That'd be kind of risky.
cumbersome,
Yeah, very slow.
inexpensive.
Uh-huh. Yeah, so I'm thinking council there.
What was that one?
Incurred debt and levy taxes.
I have an extra copy or two if somebody.
Oh, I know she-
Transfer funds within department budget. Actually, I don't know even whether you can do that when you set your budget. Is that even possible?
Council can under the
Council
current
can?
setup.
Okay.
The manager just can't start transferring things in the budget.
Okay.
The manager more than likely.
Well, you
be the
two
one
different-
to propose
He would
the
propose
transfer.
that.
Well, there must be some level where the manager can transfer
Probably
something.
small amounts, but any large amounts.
Mhm.
Both within a department and between departments, you're saying.
But what about contingency?
Again, I think the manager has to come bring that to council.
And that's where, on some of these, I think they're helpful to go through, but I don't see where a lot of them get to that level.
Okay.
of
So those two, certainly within between departments would have to go to council, and we're saying the other one's council too. Okay. The hire and appoint the city manager. We already said that. Council, yeah. Appoint department heads.
Okay,
Is
hold
that-
on one
Yeah,
second.
go ahead.
I think the finance director does transfer of funds. It doesn't go to council, though, does it, Larry?
If the budget has a run place,
And
a
they
budget.
move it, I don't think so.
Okay. But you had to have a
The way they pay the city manager.
It's minor things, though, I mean, it's
minor, I
not-
could see that.
Yeah.
But,
Major, yeah, probably
yeah.
that's their council.
Well, what if
Never
it's,
happened.
well, what if
Never
it's,
happened.
Yeah.
$10,000 for IT equipment, and you
See, that's a
transfer
council.
that,
That's big.
that's a council issue.
We get those
I
all
would
the
say
time, it's just,
Yeah.
usually in the form of, like a resolution, transferring 10,000 from this to this, and then it'll say like staff recommends this.
so it's coming from the manager?
Yeah.
Really, okay.
Yeah, but let's not get bogged
What's
down in
voting
that,
for?
because it's coming from the manager, because that's a day-to-day managerial function.
Right.
But it's still ultimately approved by
Yeah.
council.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. The hire and appoint department heads, I'm kind of assuming that's the manager from the route that we're taking?
With or without approval of council?
That's a good question.
I would suggest with.
I would too, yeah.
How do we do that now?
See, but my problem with a lot of these questions is we want it one way but not the
What's
other.
that?
If you have the chance,
Manager completely?
if you're able to approve the hire, are you not able to invoke the fire?
Or
give it a one-way
influence the
street.
hire.
You rapping?
Sorry, Lee, what?
I'm just
Or
saying.
influence the hire. If council has to approve the manager's hiring, then isn't council just doing the hiring? And it kind of opens up the hiring of the department heads to political process that may or may not be appropriate.
Yeah, I mean, that's one where even if I were having, saying we said the manager could appoint the mayor could appoint the city manager, this is one where I'm thinking, the manager does this, so. Because at this level, this is where I definitely want to shield department heads from any kind of
Yeah,
politics.
I would agree with that too. And I'll go back to when Tim Heilman got hired. There was an awful lot of work done by Joe and by, he had appointed a committee. I think we had somebody from the state Fire Chiefs Association that did all the interviews. And frankly, there's not a member of council or the mayor at the time who was capable of being in a position to second guess that or
So no one from council was appointed to sit on.
it's not our job. Well, I mean, that back then.
Well,
I'm just saying,
actually, I think
the
you
work
just
is-
hit on something, is that it's unlikely that the council members are gonna have the qualifications to really look over a department head. I mean, that's gonna be so specific in terms of their qualities.
That's more likely that their next door neighbor and drinking buddy is.
Yeah, oh, yeah. Yeah, that's scary, yeah.
So that's why I'd be real reluctant to take that away from
Okay,
the manager.
I like that. So we're set on that?
Manager hires.
Manager hires.
Manager hires.
You can speak up anytime you want.
Yeah.
I think that council approval is necessary.
Is there a department head that's been hired that you can cite specifically that you think council should have been able to speak
No.
on? Why you think that? Is there a reason for thinking that maybe council's better
For me, it
qualified?
would be to prevent the city manager from having carte blanche power to hire his drinking buddy.
I think we have that because if the city manager starts hiring his drinking buddies for things, then council sees that and council gets rid of them by firing the city manager, and then they turn around and hire a new city manager, probably with the explicit guidelines to say, now you gotta go get rid of these department
That's
heads.
pretty radical, to think that because of a department head hiring, or that you would go to the manager and say, you're done,
Yeah, that seems like
that's pretty extreme.
it's a long process. It's not as simple as just going out and saying, well, you know what, you're fired. We're going to find a new
How often
city
do we hire
manager. That,
department heads?
you know, I mean, we've had an interim city manager now for how long that we can't find that we haven't found a full-time one to replace him with. So I don't know. Yes, you could threaten the manager, like, we're going to fire you and replace you, but I don't think it's as easy as said. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, but on this.
But I'm really saying that if the manager is literally appointing his drinking buddies to, unqualified people.
No,
in the
no, I
department heads,
understand what
I
you're
think you're gonna go there really fast.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying, yeah, and it's going to be tough to just, I mean, you're going to be firing managers and trying to find replacement ones all the time.
Well, no, because I don't think managers are gonna do that. I think most managers are gonna do their job.
I don't either, but I think there should be some sort of safeguard in there. Because if you do bring it to that it has to be approved by council, that's 3 no votes that they're going to have to get to not hire a department head, you know what I mean?
No, I just don't agree. I mean, and the reality is you're hiring this guy or gal to run the city. They're going to be doing a good job, and
If we don't have good people underneath them, that's gonna be a reflection of
I'd
the
say
job.
Have it more
historically, it's been, the department heads have been unbelievably well qualified in the city.
No, don't get me wrong. I wasn't saying that it has to go to. I would just.
I'm just saying it works.
It does work. I was just saying like what Richard brought up about how you can just fire the city manager and hire a new one if he starts getting too radical with stuff. It's not that easy. I don't think to just.
I think it's more likely.
Say, hey, you're
scenario
fired. Let's find a
is-
new manager because
The most likely
you
scenario.
can't really find those in the Altoona Mirror under the classifieds.
A department has done something very, very unpopular, and the city manager is sort of standing by his man, and then the political pressure comes from city council to, hey, you're either going down with them or you get rid of them. So, I'm talking something, headlines type thing where, he's trying to protect his guy, but there's no protecting them. And the political pressure.
And one may be
Council
what we
either
did.
take both out or you find something to do. But on the hiring end, I don't see it as being.
Wait, for me, it might be more accountability in the fact that at least if the people are not happy with the city manager, with the department heads, for whatever reason, maybe it's justified, it's unjustified, at least they feel that they have a say in electing different council people that could affect that change. I feel that it makes the people feel more empowered.
My problem with all of this is that it's sort of blending these two huge examples that we have in front of us. Either you have the very sanitary model that is, appoint a city manager who does everything, or you have an executive branch who, there's checks and balances and who the manager appoints, then there's, confirmation and approval by the city council, and you have a whole sort of, huge structure that you have with that executive branch. But the sort of mixing and matching, I don't see a blueprint for where it's been done and how it would work.
That's probably what we're going to have to come up with.
If we feel it's necessary to go in that direction, but so far we've circled all the things that are exactly city manager form of government.
And not to beat a dead horse, but if we have a city manager that's being paid to do everything, then why do we need a full-time mayor?
So that
The
was
city
the rest of
manager
it.
is
I think-
managing the day-to-day operations, the mayor hopefully is out, you know, looking at economic development
40
projects
hours a week.
and there's plenty of work to do.
Probably 80.
I think we'll come back to that once we get all the job descriptions down, and then we'll kind of reassess. So, how much is this person really gonna get paid for this job description?
So where are we on that higher point?
I think we were manager on the higher,
I think
higher in the point, but
Yeah.
we were talking about approval there second, then I don't know.
Well, hire and appoint city manager is council, right?
Yeah.
Hire and appoint department heads.
We said with the manager, but we got off on a tangent on whether or not there was a council approval.
Well, that was just an issue brought up, and let's see your vote or move on. You're against it? I've changed my mind.
I believe that there should be council approval.
Okay, I'm okay with the manager doing all that now, after discussion.
I as well.
Me too.
I'm okay with manager.
And so we're gonna have the manager do the removal too?
Do we hear from Bob?
Well, we'll get there, I guess.
Sorry.
Hey, Bob, what'd you say?
I'm on the fence on this one.
Oh, come on, Bob. You ever had some? Did you ever have to finally decide, choose up one, let the other one right?
I've been there and done that.
Yeah.
You know, members
Here we
of
go
council
before the-
may go anytime to the manager's office, because I've had positive and negative conversations with the city managers, you know, concerning department heads, like, hey, this guy, you know, he's doing a great this and that, and he did that, or hey, this guy, you know, maybe, you know, what do you think? Is usually why I would go to Joe. Am I seeing this wrong? I'd always go to get like Joe or Omar's opinion on it, because they're there all day, every day.
To your point, I think that if you have 4 city councilmen that are very concerned about a department head, whether or not they have direct power to take, you know, to remove him or not, I think that
I'm gonna say that
the political pressure would be of such that it would be difficult to survive.
My opinion is, I don't think they should have anything to do with the removal, but I think in the hiring end of it, if it's recommended by the manager, I think the manager's recommendation should come to council when they should approve it.
I agree.
It's not very difficult. I mean,
Are you ambivalent?
No, that's 5-2.
and then I concede, but that's not my opinion.
Okay, just so it goes, I'm keeping the record here. So it looks like the manager will hire department heads and remove department heads.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah, we're getting to the remove, but yes.
Shall we just skip to the remove since we're there already?
Let's do the solicitor.
Okay, city solicitor. All right. Is that the?
Former mayor.
Yeah.
Make it the former.
Actually, I'd hire this one all day.
Well, that would be Bill.
I said, hey, former mayor.
I think that's council is what I thought.
Right.
Right.
Is that how it's done now?
Yes.
Okay.
Is that indefinite term, I assume?
Yes.
All right.
Until they want to get rid of me.
Okay.
We love you,
So
Larry.
remove the city manager as council.
Yep.
Remove department heads. Is that the manager?
Yep.
I think even within the 5-2, we were okay with that, right?
Yep.
Yeah, we were maybe unanimous. Okay. Remove the solicitor, must be council at that point. Appoint the city clerk. Is that going to be manager?
Right now, council hires 3 people.
What is that?
The manager, the city clerk, and the solicitor.
Oh, I didn't know that.
was council.
What's that?
I didn't know that
Yeah, well,
they
yeah.
hired the clerk too.
Yeah.
Okay.
The clerk works for council. I always used to say she has a intelligent person and 6 unreasonable egos. But none of us could ever agree who the one was.
Can I ask, is
Okay, all right.
the clerk autonomous from the manager then?
Yeah.
In all?
The manager oversees the clerk under the plan of government.
All right. So
They
that's
have any
good, so
choice
that'll,
to
that'll be
against.
removed, the clerk as well, that's not on here, but that'll be removed, the clerk too.
Is there a position description currently for the city clerk?
Fair Class A code.
There isn't any code.
There's enough paper to put
In
it
the,
on.
yeah, it gives what her duties are. No, it doesn't, it's not a real specific. She's the keeper of the records.
Council secretary.
Big thing she does is really the records for the city. Keep the minutes, that sort of thing. The official record keeper. There's enough of those.
The city controller, should we go with an elected city controller? I think we've been advised to do that from several other places. Voters, right.
I'm sorry, help me there.
The city controller, to have an elected city controller from the voters.
Is that a mandatory position at all?
No.
Is it a full-time position at the city?
I'd like to be educated on what that is. I honestly don't know, so.
AC
what
came
is
here
that?
and told us what he did that night, remember?
Yeah, I know, I'm still not sure what that is.
Crunches a lot of numbers.
He works for the city, but it's a.
But how is that different from a finance director?
He gets about 25,000, and any check, any expense goes through his office, and he's more like part of the checks and balances, so to speak. He puts an eye on every expenditure, which every year the audit, we get in trouble for the same thing. You don't have enough people overlooking this, this, and this. But yeah, that's what AC pretty much
How
does.
many hours, he's not full-time then?
No.
Why is it different than the solicitor, though? I'm just curious. You know, as far as, you know, the council appoints the solicitor, that's sort of a, I guess you're more of a service than a check and balance, and the
Well,
controller's
yeah.
seen more of a checks and balance person.
I guess it's the controller would be hired by the voters.
But I mean, why would you maybe not be able to hire a firm or, you know, accounting firm to do that same function as city council versus a person
You do have
specifically?
Young Oaks doing the city audit.
Okay.
This is a day-to-day check. And I guess the former study commission, felt that they needed that. Somebody look over the checks that come in. You know, are you spending the money correctly?
Have they eliminated the treasurer's position?
It could have been part of it.
Paul might remember that.
Plus, at the time, Stu Duncan needed a job, so.
He was already in.
So are you saying it is required
No,
for a class city
no.
code? No, it's not.
But I mean, it's a question of whether or not the finance director's position could consume those, or the department of the finance director could consume those responsibilities.
If that happened, I mean, the way it is right, who appoints the auditors? The council voters still select an auditor? So it seems like right now we have a three-pronged checks and balances right now. We have council does the auditing, voters do the controller, and the manager is doing the finance director.
I think we may find a couple of these things as we go along, where maybe we want some more information on them, and maybe we could set those things off to the side, and maybe if we get enough people combined where we want to do another round of interviews or get some more information, that, you know, maybe that's one of the things that we might not want to.
I would be happy with going back and revisiting.
If we just
yes.
set maybe one meeting aside at some point and say, you know, these are 5 issues where we'd like to hear from, you know, department heads or city, you know, sort of do interviews and make a decision.
Okay.
Where are we now? First meeting in February.
Everybody's good, all right.
No, I'm saying if we need AC Stable before the end of tax season, good luck.
No, I'm saying that this may be one of, this is sort of a minor issue in the grand scheme of things, that maybe we wait till we have
Yeah,
5 meetings go by and we list, you know, 6 or 7, then we bring a bunch of people in at one time and try to knock a bunch of lingering issues out as they come up.
I'm good with
sounds
that.
good.
I'm just thinking.
You know, another thing you can do, and I don't know, you can ask the League of Cities to tell us, find out how many, whatever position you're interested in, they can find out
Who has
easily
what?
who has what, and give us information.
Yep.
If you guys ever
On
want
the
that.
city controller, I think is one we need more information on. I would agree with the folks that are speaking up.
Okay.
So who wants to keep a list of ones we're gonna follow up on?
Yeah,
Okay, two
I'm
separate.
marking it down, revisit I have.
Yeah.
All right, the city auditor is appointed by
You'll follow-
council.
Excuse me, you'll follow up with your idea there, please. Thank you.
The city auditor,
Yes.
That's the
That's
young-
all right. Yeah, young brown supervisor.
That's similar to hiring a
okay,
solicitor
Right.
all right,
as
that's
a
all.
service.
The appoint commission, the board, all their various authority members, commission members, we have lots of those groups.
Now, question on that. You know, I noticed looking down through the many boards that a lot of them are either mayor or council. Some of those set by
Yes.
third class city.
And I can tell you which ones are.
But with that statute, is it in third
They
class?
would trump.
Or which would trump?
The, like the parking authority, the Authorities Act, would trump because it's applicable to all municipalities.
Okay.
Okay, so it's like the parking authority. Yeah, housing authority, redevelopment authority. You have to follow what they say. The Parking Authority Act says it's the mayor. Okay, redevelopment authority, it's the mayor. And then the housing authority, it's the mayor with approval of council. Zoning hearing board, it's upon determination of governing body. Those you can't change. The other ones you could.
Wait, the zoning?
Sorry, the alternate water authority, mayor and council has to do it. Zoning hearing board, mayor and council, basically. That's determination of governing body. The governing body has to determine who's appointed to that. So zoning hearing board, anybody on an authority like the water authority, that's mayor and council.
Are you, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
When it's saying governing body though, would the governing body be the elected officials of Altoona as mandated by their charter? So would governing body be a means of allowing us to create that, whether we vary from what's done or not?
I didn't bring that book with me, but I think it defines governing body in the municipal, that's under the municipalities planning code. And I think governing body is defined as the elected officials for that municipality.
I agree, but that could still mean.
Yeah, however you
could
put
say
it.
the
Yeah.
elected officials shall do it this way, and the mayor shall nominate.
Well, you
and the
could
council
try it.
appoint. Or, yeah, I'm just asking, I have no agenda on that, I don't,
Right.
I'm just thinking out loud.
I think, when I read it, I believed that it was the governing body.
Right.
Whoever happens to be elected, that's who gets to appoint.
And you mentioned zoning, is this gonna also be the planning commission, the
No.
shade tree?
Planning
rec?
commission's a little different. Planning commission says it's the mayor and cities or designation for that form of government. So I believe you can mess with the planning commission.
So basically what we're deciding here is if not stated elsewhere, this is how we would like it handled.
Right,
Because most of them are going to be stated elsewhere.
they are.
It's
Yeah.
stated elsewhere in the,
The enacting ordinance.
of a given commission.
Enacting one of.
The
But I-
Authorities Act, the Municipalities Planning Code, the
Somewhere at the state
Redevelopment Act.
So they, in other words, the water authority gets to determine how they get members?
No, under Pennsylvania law, there's something called the Municipal Authorities Act. And under that act, it's applicable to every municipality in the state. So then it would be applicable to whom will, because it's a uniform act.
It's not just a third class.
Right,
It's a,
that's
Okay.
exactly right.
Okay.
And in there, it says the mayor and council appoint members of the authority.
And who wrote that?
The Pennsylvania legislature,
When?
way back in the 40s.
So I think the question that Wayne brought up, though, is the appropriate thing here, is that, is it gonna be, and you'll check in on this, I guess, is that, can we set a situation where the mayor nominates the people, and council is just verifying, yes, these are gonna be our people, right? Is that kind of what you were saying?
I was just
Versus the council comes up with all these people and
you know, almost all of these read the same way. The mayor shall appoint members to councils, commissions, boards, and authorities, subject to council's advice and approval.
advice.
That's how much almost all these
Uh-huh.
council manager ones read.
And all I was suggesting was, I don't know that there are that many
or elected.
Yeah, so it might be worth just getting a report saying what.
Okay. And one thing that, as I thought about this, and I guess maybe it's pretty well set, I thought that this would be one of those situations where, well, here may be some authority of the mayor, that the mayor can kind of basically more or less single-handedly decide all of these members, with maybe the approval of the council, or maybe not, I'm not really sure, or whether this should be some, council just does it all by
You're saying
count to four.
most of them are that way, where the mayor.
The Housing Authority Act says the mayor with approval of council. That's the only one that says that. The other ones say, like, the redevelopment act, the mayor does it. The parking authority, the mayor does it.
Now, how does that work? I mean, a lot of them have a certain term to go back and forth. Is the mayor only permitted, we have a new mayor just elected, is he only permitted to put new people on those as people's terms expire?
Yes. Because only a court or death can remove a person, which put them in an authority.
And
Or
are those
resignation.
people, are there
Yeah, that's
the same people, can they serve on different
Yes.
ones? There's
Depends.
no conflict?
It depends. It depends. The zoning hearing board, no other city office. You can't appoint that person to another city office. Planning commission, they can do several jobs.
Although
Council can be on planning.
the city's application says that, well, either as an ordinance or just a matter of fact. Okay.
Well, maybe the administrative code, and I did, you could be right about that one. I didn't
Said
check.
you can only serve on
I
one.
checked the law
Okay.
as far as.
It does
the
say
law.
that now.
The application does, I don't know where it,
So your
I don't know where the
administrative.
application stems from, but the application says you can only serve on one.
I believe the only person that serves on two is, and I don't even think it's necessarily by vote of council, the Altoona City Planning Commission representative, one of those folks does dual service by serving on the Blair County Planning Commission. Yeah, it's Bob Gutschall, isn't it?
He's not here tonight.
Jim Dixon does too.
There's
So-
three
so
representatives.
there's
Anyways, three of them do.
But
that's not
as
what I'm
I remember that, those
Not bad.
double serving, but we don't get to vote on, we don't make that appointment to Blair County Planning Commission, that's not our vote.
Right.
We make recommendations, and traditionally, they always follow.
That's right.
But other than that, I don't know of anybody that serves on two boards, and I'm pretty sure it's administrative code.
Do we have anything in
Which
there?
could change because it's an ordinance, so it could change.
Well, this might be radical, but is there anything in there that says that they can't serve on any other nonprofit board?
Why would you do that?
Well, for example, when I worked at the YWCA, we had a group of probably some of the most powerful women in the city. However, they served on so many different boards that it really created a conflict of interest, and they served those other agencies more so than the YWCA.
I think that'd be up to the mayor to be, discriminate between who appoints someone and not to have time to serve.
You're not gonna get anybody if you control their lives to that end, you know, hey, if you wanna be on the plumbing zoning, or plumbing hearing board, you can't be on your little kid's, Little League, board, I mean, I don't think it makes any sense.
Does it make any sense to create a conflict of interest clause?
That would be,
That
has to
already
be part of
exists.
that.
Yeah,
Would
under
have
the
to-
ethics.
They can't vote on anything. That's why I was asking how much overlap there is, and, you know, so it sounds like there is checks and balances, and probably you don't have people pounding down your door to serve on, I assume. They're not like lined up down
That's
13th
true.
Street or anything. So, you know, I guess we have to do the best we can to keep the checks and balances, but, I mean, we have to make sure there's qualified people. I'm sure those positions are pretty important for what it goes on.
It's frustrating at times, and, I don't know, Councilman Butterbaugh, you know, where you're trying to find somebody, and you love somebody to serve on two boards, you just can't do it.
Yeah, it's
But
tough at
I think there's always been pretty adamant
Can I say
stance to
that,
stick to that.
could we look at possibly changing the meeting times to evening versus during the day?
Well, why?
I mean, aren't some of these meetings held during the day? Yes?
Some, yeah.
I mean,
Well, that's not our
Isn't it
position. I
up
mean,
to-
we can't tell the city authority when to meet.
well, I'm just saying, if we're
Housing
lacking candidates for these commissions,
But doesn't the commission, board of authority set their own meeting schedule?
Correct.
Yeah.
so they can do whatever's best for their.
Yeah, I don't think we want to set that as part of our charter.
Well, if you put in a charter, then they can only be changed by referendum.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Most of them are now.
And I would say that I filled out the paperwork twice and was never contacted.
As did I.
Well, but
But I could
the
take
mayor
a hint.
does, the mayor does the appointing, so unless you lobby for the mayor to
Look,
appoint
didn't
you.
you show them, huh?
We all need to
Sorry for you guys. So what I think I've kind of heard here is that we might be interested in setting something up a little unique there if we're actually able to do it on some of these. So on some of these, it's already set. The mayor has to do it, but on others, we don't even know
Well, I
whether
think-
we could do it
I
differently.
think we found that some are strictly,
Right.
says exactly what you must do, some are a little ambiguous, and then we need to at least write something for what happens in the lack of direction from the governing authority.
My guess is what's left over, you're not gonna get.
That's right. Yeah, because I think all the ones that I would have
Well, I
thought
was
were
going
important,
through
I
it, I
already
was
heard.
reading most of them, Linda gave, and most of them state in there what you can and can't do, like, for like electric, plumbing, like you have to be a certified plumber, you have to be a master electrician to sit on
That's
those
third class
boards.
city code.
So I mean, most of those guidelines are already dictated as far
As far as being
The
able to
boards.
put someone.
as, well,
Well, those.
some of them even say you couldn't be
Those
a,
now.
you couldn't be a city official, like a city official, you can't sit on the.
Well, to that degree, which boards, commissions, and authorities are actually dictated by third class city code, and that we either can choose to memorialize in the charter or leave
That's right.
open to council to abolish, should they choose not to continue with those.
Well, maybe Linda can bring a list the next
Yeah.
time, and I can
I-
tell you what can be changed and what can't.
Okay.
I agree with Wayne, there'd be very few that
Yeah.
you can really, the boards, I think you can, but would you want to appoint somebody to the plumbing board that isn't a plumber? I mean, that
I
doesn't,
think a plumber kind of something there.
I'm
They're
a
charging-
non-electrician in the electric.
yeah,
Are they charging?
Would be good.
If somebody
For
like
the
me on
board?
there, I can change it.
I think, or, yeah.
Yeah.
There is, there's term limits, so.
I guess as a future follow-up, is just some more information.
You don't even have a plumbing board,
Under third class city code or under?
under your home rule.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think there's some of these boards and commissions,
It can go away if you
well,
want them to.
or we could leave it up to council to choose which ones to keep. Right now, they must have them because third class city code says they must. If we don't address it at all, it's up to them to write their own rules
These
in
are
the future.
administrative code.
Yes. They can write their own rules in the future,
Right.
or if we feel that it's very important they continue to have them, we can memorialize it in the
Right.
charter,
That's right.
similar to what the provision of the third class city code is.
That makes sense.
So what,
I don't know if it.
So the follow-up is to get a list, and
what
where,
did we decide?
I think the follow-up is to get a list.
We didn't decide
Follow-up is to get a
anything.
list, what the originating, is it a state statute, or is it the
And we
third
can
class
do that.
city code? Why do we
I
have?
can give you most of those now, but you need a
Well,
list.
okay, I don't mind
Yeah,
having
I-
a list, but what does it
And then
matter?
who
We're
appoints?
just trying to decide who appoints.
Right.
I mean,
Well, the list would tell you whether
It's
you can
mandated.
change it from
I don't wanna
a
change
state
it.
statute.
if we just let everything the way it is, who appoints to whatever it is.
But we're
Well, then I'm
maybe
saying
we
what the
don't wanna
catch-all
deal
that
with
the, most of these other charters, what the catch-all is that the mayor just does that, which is.
Okay, well, why don't we do that?
Because I'd like to be fully informed before I want to see what is left over.
What would the difference be whether the mayor initiates it with approval of council or?
Some of them aren't approval, some of them he just, carte blanche has a point,
Yeah.
power.
That's what
Okay,
he was
so-
saying, some of them, he was reading the ones that the mayor just appoints.
No one else has that say.
Like the redevelopment authority,
You
the
check it
act
out.
specifically says the mayor appoints. It wouldn't matter what we said here, even in your home rule charter, the mayor appoints according to the act.
I think there might be, I want to see the list before I
Yeah.
say that there
That's
are,
right.
but I can imagine that there are some of these commissions or boards or whatever we want to call them, where it's advantageous to have council members do it. Because I think of council members as being the closest people to the voters in our city, elected city government, closer to the voters than the mayor. Who are members of these, they may be more adept to do that. But anyway, I need to see the list before I can really
Okay.
say any of that further, I think.
Another thing I was gonna say was, if that's something we can't have ready for next meeting, that's,
I think that,
Yeah, we should.
thank you.
Okay, so, city council members, are meeting, sorry, attend the meetings. I think that's gonna be pretty much everybody, but some people are mandatory to attend. Anybody can attend.
I'm sorry, I have a question about that too. Bill Mugebauer, how many meetings has he been out of town for?
He's missed very few, because you can call in, and he's done that many times,
Where is he calling in from?
wherever.
So what's the issue?
Under the Sunshine Act, you can call in to participate in the meeting, and you're considered to be at the meeting.
I don't know, but in talking to different people, my impression is that he spends a lot of time in Florida.
Okay.
What does that happen?
Meaning that how can you represent the city if you're not currently
Well,
running in it?
well, that is something that we can and other people have put in their,
When we talk about council.
yeah,
Four
yeah,
meetings a
we
year.
can say that, you know, if you miss more than X number of,
Starting tomorrow, I think.
council meetings, you're out. And some people have written that in.
do that or not.
We can certainly do that.
4 meetings.
You have to have, solicitor have to
What,
have, so you can do
I'm
that.
sorry, I missed that.
I think that I read,
For removing an elected official from office.
You can only do it according to the Constitution. Now, the second-class township code says that if you get 10% of the voters who voted the governor's election to get a petition, you can remove someone, and they did this. You know, in some township, they did it. The guy appealed, the guy that they removed, and it went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said the only method of removal of an elected official is set by the Constitution, and that is they have to be, you know, removed by the state senate and all that good stuff. That to be found guilty of some hideous thing.
okay.
And then,
Yeah, I
That's where I was
basically,
going with this. You basically just don't elect the person next time.
no, I know,
You
I
don't get
vaguely
to
thought
choose.
that I saw somewhere in here, in someone's.
you did. I'm sure
they
it's in
did.
there.
Okay,
It's
it's
in the
just-
it's still in the second-class township code.
No.
Doesn't mean it's
They mean
illegal.
nothing.
Yeah, all
They
right,
mean
gotcha,
nothing.
gotcha, okay,
So,
okay.
they don't.
All right. Attending the commission, board, and authority members, meetings, attending all the various meetings.
So we're putting, who
I think that's gonna be kind of the same that we can do now.
voters can come if they want.
That's right, public meetings.
Make a mandatory one, put up front, every voter must attend.
So preside over city council meetings. Should that be the mayor presiding over council meetings?
Yes.
Full-time mayor.
What did
What
you
do
do
you
with
have?
commission board meetings?
I don't think it's not necessary now. They're not even on those boards.
I thought the council were on a member council.
They can-
But you can attend the meeting.
They can attend it just like these
Right.
guys attended the meeting now.
Yeah, right, exactly. In which
And
case
every once in a
everybody can
while,
attend.
I know in the past, there would be issues, we had issues at one point with the housing authority, and so we asked somebody to serve as sort of the liaison.
On the agenda or something.
Oh, I did think when I was looking at this a second time about
That's
why
pretty rare.
an executive meeting of these various boards. Now, I don't know that the various boards would have the need to have an executive
Well, they're under
meeting.
Sunshine Act, right? They can
But
only do it for certain
council-
They
reasons,
only do it for certain reasons.
which are
Yeah,
very
council
limited
could,
for a
council
board
could
commission.
definitely have an executive meeting. So who can come to those? Is that only gonna be members?
When you say, you mean an executive session, like to discuss litigation?
Yeah.
All that sort of thing? Any council member can attend.
Okay.
And you can, with consent of council, obviously bring others into this.
That's right.
Which you have to have, you might need, you know, if it's an employment issue, maybe concerning a police officer, you would want the chief there.
Again, this is something that charters typically don't even delve into.
Okay, all right.
That's right.
Okay. Preside over the various commission meetings, I assume that's gonna be whoever's appointed head of the commission. Individual commissions, right?
Yeah, I don't know that that's really even a subject.
Right.
for us.
I'll set up.
No, okay, set council meeting agenda, the mayor,
Who typically sets the manager sets the agenda now?
does the manager?
But since we're electing
Oh, really?
a full-time mayor.
Well, they, if they get input from council, if council wants something on the agenda, tell the manager.
But if we're creating a stronger mayor here, why wouldn't we want the mayor to set the agenda? Since he's gonna be out there 24/7 and doing our bidding.
They might want to give some control over that.
I would,
Yeah.
that's the guy that ought to be in charge of the council.
I agree with that, and I think it's the issue of appoint commissions. If there's a way to provide the mayor with more substantive things to do, to be held accountable for the money that
There
he
you
or
go.
she's gonna make, I would agree.
There you go.
So we're saying the mayor set the meeting agenda.
Yeah, let's hope the mayor's smart enough to
We'll
ask
be, gonna be
people
working with the manager, right?
what would be on the agenda. Sure.
Okay, set the various commission meeting agenda, I think that's just not, I'll get that off here. All right. Give an annual state of the city message, that's the mayor. All right, unusual stuff here. Sale of assets.
I think we need to know a little bit about the restrictions on that now, or where that comes from.
You would, I would think, want all of council to be able to have a voice in
Well-
selling your assets.
Right, and I'm kind of actually thinking that it would be a three-tiered system. I can imagine that there's really small assets that the manager can do.
Certain codes throughout the Commonwealth, I'm thinking it's second class township code, city code may be this way. If it's 1,000 or less, the manager determines how
Right.
that's to be disposed of.
Okay.
And 1,000, I don't know. There's certain levels. And then over a certain amount, if it's maybe 4,000, you have to bid it. Because you want the best price for it, right? So, but that's something I don't know.
And that's set in what code?
Most codes have that, as far as disposal of assets.
You mean that our charter would contain that? Or are you saying that there's a state code somewhere that contains that would override the
Well,
charter?
recently, the state changed the limit on bid of, if you're bidding for something, if the city needs supplies, it used to be, if it was over 4,000 but under 10, you needed 3 quotes. If it was under 4, you could just pick up the phone and buy whatever you needed. 4 to 10, you had to get 3 quotes. And then anything over 10, you had to advertise in the paper, for people to give you bids. Now, the legislature, I think very wisely, changed that. They peg it to the CPI now, but it's increased. Anything over 18.5 has to be bid, and then it's pegged to the CPI, basically. Anything under 18, 10 to 18, it's 3 quotes, and anything under 10, you just go up, you pick up the phone and buy it.
And so we don't need to set that, that's purchasing. So we don't need to set any kind of purchasing limits like that in our charter.
I think you do, because...
Oh, you think we have to mirror?
Yes, the legislature had to amend each code when they did that, so it's not a uniform law.
Oh, okay. Then, well, the way they did that, I love that, because I think anytime we're dealing with dollar values, I think we need to peg it to something. I hate stagnant numbers. So, I really hate stagnant numbers.
Love and hate be used in the same paragraph.
We can either adopt that now or give that power to council to modify it.
To modify, yeah, you could.
Mayor and council, I'm just saying is, because it's a third-class city code issue, we can change that.
I agree with the fact that they may change it in the future, we may not like the change, but if we tie them by charter to it, then, we may like what it is right now.
That's the debate, yeah.
So it's a matter
And
of whether or not.
sometimes if the state does, they don't like what you're doing, as a home rule municipality, they just make everything applicable to home rules also. They just say this will be applicable to home rule. They're taking more and more of that away from home rule municipalities.
Well, I don't know whether it's worthwhile to say, I would like to set that in our charter, and to set it in a 3-tiered manner, kind of like what you described, pegged with all 3 tiers pegged to CPI. Is that kind of along the lines of what y'all are thinking?
If under chapter or article 5, financial management, would that not be?
That's where it is, most of these. So I don't know that it's something we need to.
Let's address that.
Address it over there. Okay, great, all right. And I think the sale of assets is sort of the same way. But we can deal with that when we get to financial stuff too. The sale of the water authority, council chamber building, heard these things. Of course, we've heard of the water authority. That's not a crazy thing, but voters. Yeah, voters. Yeah, I'm for the voters on all those things. So once we're over a certain value, it needs to be voters in my mind.
Well, I don't know that you could do that with the authority, because that's in the Authorities Act, and that's a uniform law. And that says in the Authorities Act that the city can take back the assets. Now, once the city has the assets, then I think you could impose it on, like the voters would have to vote to get rid of the water system. All right? But right now, there's nothing preventing the city from taking back the assets of the water authority. They have to pay off their debt. The debt of the authority is like $40–60 million. So the city would have to float bonds for that, but they could take back the assets, and then they could sell the assets. That's how that would have to be done.
And what I'm saying is that should be a referendum, that
But
council, that
what I'm
we
saying
shouldn't.
is all this discussion here is beyond
It's
the
later.
scope of our current chapter.
Okay, all right. Short-term contracts, long-term contracts, very long contracts. And literally what I was thinking here was, I was thinking of Chicago, where the mayor entered into that, some 100-year contract with the parking meters that everyone's realizing is crazy. And that was a case where, a mayor did that. So,
So where's your check mark?
what? My check, it depends on where those are. I'm thinking the manager can enter into some degree of short-term contracts up to some time period, and after that, the council has to agree to it. And because I think we are getting into this realm of shared public-private, partnership type stuff, and I think after a certain point,
It's so hard
it
to
needs to get.
It's going to be very hard to try to define what you don't even know is an issue. To write something that won't be constraining into a charter for an issue you don't know doesn't exist or not.
Well, I think a contract that has a timeline of, more than a generation, a multi-generational time frame, I think that's pretty well set, and is pretty well known that's what you're doing when you write these contracts. So I think something like that, I think it's pretty easy to set that to a
I don't
record.
know that I've seen the blueprint.
Well, there could be a problem with
Challenging.
that. I can understand where you're coming from, but city bond issues are usually for 25 or 30 years, and that's a
Yeah,
contract.
you're right.
And so would the voters have to vote for what? You'd never get any financing. No, I'm not
Yeah.
voting for that.
Yeah, you're right, yeah.
So you have to, it's a good idea, but you have to.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good intentions in a lot of this, but without, when you really go outside the realm of what's been tested, you really are potentially creating a huge issue for the city if we don't do it.
To write it into
Correctly.
the charter.
Right. Yeah.
So if we
They-
remain silent on it,
Yes.
They
what?
can do.
Then the council has the ability to do it, but that's just but to Richard's point on some of these, would you be leaving too much to chance or too much to the...
Well, that's where you'd have to
Yeah.
trust in the leadership of
Yeah.
council and the mayor.
Well, all contracts right now are approved by council. I mean, even if it's for a year, council has to approve, and the manager may sign it, but the supervision.
Well, that's what I was saying. A lot of this business stuff is initiated, processed, and by the manager, and then brought
Presented to
forward
council.
to the
That's
board
exactly
of
right.
council,
That's exactly
and then it's okay, and then he signs or she signs off.
So, Richard, that may take care of your concern, because council would see this contract coming that's 30 years for a dog kennel use or something, Council, well, what do you need that for 30 years? And it doesn't make any sense.
I think his concern is that the council may all decide it's great to sell the water authority and...
Well, that's exactly what it is.
I don't know
And
that you
think
can
there's a lot of.
foresee what those
Well-
specific issues are.
The wisdom of council is predicated upon the diversity of opinion of elected officials. That's what a participative democracy is. If they...
I think you can run into a lot of cases where there is a short-term political advantage, financial political, things are really things are going great. No, our city budget is
four
great
of the
because we just did these things and floated all this money, you know, and made things look really rosy when it was really you were just creating assets for you know budget. And so your elected officials could do something like that in the short term. In the long term, yeah, in the long term, things will come out in the light, but it'll be too late.
I don't disagree that in theory or in actual practice that has happened on occasion in some municipalities. What I disagree with is the fact that we can foresee those and structure a charter that will not handcuff them in other ways to try to alleviate a perceived issue in the future.
Well, I know as far as borrowing goes, there's something in Pennsylvania law, it's called the Unit Debt Act. And all municipalities have to follow that act. It's a uniform act. And that says that you can't borrow more than so much of your tax base. And if you try, they won't let you. You can't do it. You can't get a bond for that. There are those built-in assurances for debt kind of things. You know, under third-class city code, we have no debt limit for payment of debt. We can go millage-wise. We can have 100 mills. But the point is, if it's more than what the formula is in the Unit Debt Act, we can't get a bond for it.
I don't see the problem. I don't see this raising its issue as a debt issue. I see this coming up as an asset issue.
Okay.
And literally selling assets to, you know, I mean, you could have taken our city and I'm trying. I don't want to give examples, obviously, but I think we could all come up with them. But you could imagine that our city council could have, for the last couple of years, they could have gone into, and in fact there was proposals to get rid of the water authority.
Mayor Valentine came in here and told us how great of a success his
And a lot of
sell
communities have done.
the water authority was.
They actually leased it, they didn't sell it.
Yeah, they didn't sell it, they leased it.
Yeah, right, please, you know.
And a lot of communities have, I mean, I just.
And it's the sale that,
Tyrone,
because you can't undo the sale. You know, and there's certainly people talking about selling, basically the rec commission properties that the city, partially owns, or? I don't know.
City owns all
The
the
city owns them all, okay. So selling off that, you know, that's an asset, so let's sell, I mean, and you hear this at the national stage, let's sell the national parks to pay off the national debt, you know.
But I think with
I'm
Richard's,
serious.
I'm not speaking for Richard, I'll speak for myself. I just don't know that you can sit here and we can sit here and anticipate every good or bad move. There's sort of an implication that all of these moves would necessarily be bad. There's some good things that have happened over the years that have worked out just fine. I think the whole question is how restrictive do we make the charter versus
When you get to these
leaving it to the council and mayor.
when you get to these voter referendums, I mean, by third-class city code, we can't have referendums currently. Home rule charter, we can have voter referendums. I think when you read through these home rule charters, they don't say, this is what you must have a referendum for. It just gives the provision, here's how you do a referendum. So, you know, you're talking about some things where we say, these types of decisions will be left to the voters via referendum. I haven't read anywhere that is sort of the path that they've taken. They've just said, here's the code. If you don't like something in the code, the voters can enact the process of getting a referendum on the ballot to change that provision, but not things that are specifically, you know, sort of pushed to the citizens to make the decision.
You said a dollar
I
number?
guess you could say that in the charter that you may not sell any assets. Yeah, that's where the moral hazard is. You can say you cannot sell any assets, but then now you're stuck with all these old computers that are worth $50.
Well,
I was looking because I made notes. I had made notes when I looked over this that I thought that it was Easton, and I'm looking at this at Easton right now, that I thought that they had made prohibitions of the ordinances, what ordinance could not be. And I'm looking at Easton, and I'm thinking,
Ones are in there.
well, those are prohibitions to who's on council, I think.
You'd say they have lots of programs.
And I'm wondering whether I just made bad notes, which is possible.
Well, I would tend to agree with Wayne. I would be disinclined to try to restrict things for, somebody who's in a leadership position on council 10 years from now. I would rather remain silent on issues that are just either conjecture or even wild right now.
In my personal opinion, unless somebody has, with one of these charters or the bunch we don't have printed, unless you have sort of somewhere that we can point to of somebody who's done it successfully, I'm hesitant on any of these things to chart new territory unless we very well investigate it and see, study, and make sure we get some concurring responses that will work.
I understand that, and I don't want to tie the hands of future councils, unduly. But I will say that if there was a way to do this in a workable fashion, I would very much think that there are some aspects of the city that should remain the city and should not be within council's decision to.
But doesn't that force our opinions, this committee's opinions on council? And how do we know 10 years, just because that doesn't make sense in 2014, and I agree it doesn't make sense today, that doesn't mean in 2020 that, and
Well, and then a referendum can be used to change that. I mean, but that goes with a lot of stuff. There's a lot of things that change, and that's what the referendum
I really think
process
that
is for.
we're derailing what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be defining what the mayor can do, and this is absolutely nothing that the mayor can do, so.
Yeah, well, you're right about that, so,
We should.
okay.
I put later on
Okay, labor negotiations, I assume that that's council.
Not currently.
No.
Manager.
Strictly manager.
The council has to vote to pay this.
They approved the contract.
Yeah.
Okay.
But they have no,
The negotiation is the manager, but.
they
it
can't,
has to
council
be-
doesn't even know what's going on with negotiations.
Okay.
Well, I don't know, that's true.
Well, I mean, you have some idea, but you're not part of the proceedings as far as.
Well, we certainly can have an influence there.
Well, yeah, we used to have executive session
Yeah,
meetings where we
exactly.
do reports and say,
Yes.
here are our goals, here's where we are in the goals, here's where we're coming up short, here's what we're gonna focus on,
Yes.
which to me was always more than sufficient, as opposed to thinking a particular member of council can be some whiz bang to show up and negotiate a $16 million police contract.
Yeah, I want that.
There was a, one charter that actually specified the city was supposed to hire a professional negotiator to do this. Have we ever done that?
it. That's what the Act 47 plan.
Yeah, that's what we did this
recommended.
time around.
So,
Yeah.
And it worked very amicable for all parties involved, actually.
Because I would think someone who's a professional at doing that is going to be able to do a whole lot better than someone who's not. So but anyway, that's for later on.
Right.
Yeah. Hire fire employees within departments.
Before we leave labor negotiations, what did we say?
My view is it's the manager's primary responsibility
Okay.
with reporting relationships to the council and communication.
That's
So
all
the
it's
manager.
done now.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
But the council must approve the final
Yeah,
contract.
Yeah,
the CBA.
absolutely, yeah.
We call that the CBA, collective bargaining agreement. It's approved by council.
Hire and fire employees within departments is the manager's job.
Manager.
Increase and decrease the department size and scope.
And that's almost like a budgetary issue more than anything.
Well, size and scope are two different things, I guess, in that respect.
Yeah.
I mean, the size obviously has the ability to staff within his budget.
See, the way I view some of this is any professional dedicated manager would identify what needs to be done in reference to size and scope and economies of scale and all that kind of stuff, and then bring it to council with a recommendation.
And I'm assuming that if it's something that does not require monetary outlay, the manager
sort of a twist on that same, as far as the scope goes, how much of the current structure is dictated specifically by the third-class city code versus, must you have a fire department, a police department, a highway department, a finance department, all the departments are within the city now, is that dictated specifically by third-class city code?
About what departments
You must have, so that falls away. Okay, now what catches us? What's below that says you must have this structure? Nothing?
That's pretty much set up by council or.
That's what I'm saying, but are the departments that exist now that are mandatory by third-class city code?
No, you can change those departments.
Okay.
Some of them are, like the fire, the police, that sort of thing. That's third-class city code. But we renamed the codes department. That's not specifically called for in the third-class city code. But we have one because it's a necessary.
Well, I guess the decision within writing a charter is, do we want to mandate that certain departments exist, not exist, or leave it up to city council to do that? And is there anything that falls away when you strip away the third-class city code as it relates to how the city manager, or how with city council approval the city manages and organizes itself into departments?
I think most, as I recall from reading, at least the charters I read, they have specific, I think Tyrone has the police, talks about a police department, fire. I guess the ones you feel that are absolutely necessary for the city.
Well, I'm not saying either way, I'm just wondering when the third-class city code comes away, and if we didn't address it, are we leaving it necessarily up to the city manager in his budget proposal to,
Oh, you'd probably be leaving it to
unless,
council. Yeah.
or council to say this is what the structure will be, now you
Yes,
must
you
fill
would
out
be.
that structure.
You would be, it would be an administrative code.
City council
Yes,
would
I'm sorry, I
create
wasn't
that.
understanding your question. Yes, it would be in the administrative.
If they want a highways department, or they don't want a highways
That's right, they
department,
wouldn't have to have one.
unless we tell them in the charter they must.
Right. Some would have a public safety department, that would be fire and police.
Yes, correct.
Have a commissioner over it, and, one individual running.
Well, we have
board.
2 or 3 choices here.
Yeah, you do, you have a number.
We either dictate what the structure looks like in the charter, or we leave it maybe explicitly to the manager to set that up, but that may not work, because the city council could still
Right.
choose
They're
what they want
setting
the
the
structure.
budget, he might want all these departments not give them the budget, they may not give them the budget for it.
Okay. So I don't know where that falls in our list of priorities, but
Well,
that's something we'll
that
have
mixes
to.
off into the stuff on the next page.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. That sort of goes into this increased department size and scope. What is a department and what is its scope?
Absolutely.
And how does he define that? And where does the charter versus the council versus his own organizing and running his city?
And this is
place?
where, I think we've heard that we want the flexibility to be able to, maybe combine, as you said, a Department of Public Safety.
Or maybe we want to let them have the flexibility, but.
Right, but we don't have the flexibility now, and so maybe we get that.
We do on some, but we don't on others. That's what I was kind of looking at. What does third-class city code right now say we have to do, and what will fall away, in that we must either put something in its place in the charter, or
I believe we could get rid of all of the departments that are currently needed in the third-class city code.
okay, that's what I'm saying. Third-class city code does dictate some
Certain ones,
departments.
certain.
Okay.
So under home rule, we can reorganize
Yes.
and we can state the reorganization if we
Correct.
choose
If you
in the
want.
charter. Or we could have a statement,
The council determines. the
it's our
departments.
expectation council would organize appropriately to deliver services to the citizens.
Exactly.
I'd be more in favor of that.
Or we can memorialize what the third-class city code already has in place
No,
structure-wise.
I would not be in favor
No,
of
I'm just
that.
saying those are sort of all the options that we would have.
I think less is more in regard to written documentation in the charter.
That's what DCED says also, less is more, in the charter. It gives the council more discretion.
Yeah.
If you need to eliminate departments, let them do it, they're the ones that need to do it.
I think that's part of the underpinning process
Going down
of
the road.
what we're doing. Yeah, exactly.
Home rule, yeah,
Is
yeah.
getting rid of the constraints.
Yeah.
everything has to be public that council does too. So the sheeple can rise up at any time if they perceive that something. I said the sheeple can rise up at any time. I use that term often. And so we're always accessible.
How do you define
The imagery's all wrong. A bunch of
SHEEPLE.
sheep attacking something.
I always say that. It's time for the sheeple to rise up.
Okay, so hire and fire department administrators. I think that's kind of already covered here.
What did we do for the department size and scope? Is that
I think we're leaving that.
Yeah, we're going to leave that.
So we're
yeah.
going to revisit that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, later.
It's a different paragraph chapter.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think based on, I think we've already really discussed everything on this, all these bullets that are up here. These 6 things here, withdrawal basically.
I think these are excellent examples of decisions that may or may not have to be made at a point in the future. And my position would be that I would not pass judgment on them right now.
I agree.
I would wait for them to come up.
I think it's a mistake on any of these broad issues we're talking about to believe that we are vested with the knowledge to know what's best now or in the future. The whole question is, how do we structure something to allow council, in my view, maximum authority to do what needs to be done?
On the subject of mayor, though, I think we circled around to where I sort of started off with my initial statement.
Yep.
We've sort of defined the council manager form of government that we sort of currently exist now. And when you read most of these, they're pretty generic in enumerating the mayor's powers. You know, ceremonial head of proceedings and in an emergency, you know, those are really the only 2 duties that are enumerated. So, you know, we have all these other grand ideas for what the mayor full-time mayor position can be. I don't know how many of those you actually want to put in writing in the charter. So, as writing, you know, as either adopting one of these as the basis for the description of the mayor, you know, when you go through authorities, I don't know, just open to one. The mayor shall be the presiding officer of council. The mayor shall make appointments to boards, commissions, and authorities with the advice and consent of council. The mayor shall be the ceremonial head of an official representative of the municipality and emergency powers. But I mean, to a T, most of these are those 3 or 4 things. You know, as to today's continuation from last meeting of defining the powers and duties of the mayor, I think we're somewhat at that same juncture at this point. You know, what if we were going to write this section on mayor, which was what we were trying to set out to do, what more powers would we put into that than we've already sort of exist in the city manager form of government, council manager form of government?
Well, if we're talking about the concept of the mayor being the chief business delegate or the chief economic development facilitator for the city, what would a person need to effectively accomplish that? You'd have to have some budgetary authority, or you'd have to have a budget to accomplish this. And we're talking about how do you pay for travel, how do you pay for assistance.
So yeah, the mayor, if we're going to have a full-time mayor with those responsibilities, he would need to have a budget. You're right. What I'm looking at is I'm looking at Easton's, and what I'm kind of looking at are what are the things that Easton gives as a power or duty of the mayor, which would not be, say, power or duty of our mayor right now. And you know, and really, I don't know. I mean, here they have that the mayor submits the annual budget. In Easton. That was one, and we ended up deciding that the manager would be doing that. Lead the council in developing long-term goals, strategies. I'm kind of thinking the mayor could do that right now anyway. You know, there might be a question of follow, but I don't know that we're going to get around that.
What do you call Just some guy taking a walk.
Well, so I don't, but we can't put in there, you can't be a guy taking a walk, right? So, so a lot of these things that we would put in are gonna be presumptive that the mayor's gonna be successful in these things, and I don't know that we're guaranteeing that success, so, I don't know if we can anyway.
Do we want to consider veto power for the mayor?
You know, I don't.
Mike? I'm just asking.
Okay.
It's on the
I'm
list.
just answering.
I mean, I think it circles around to where we were last time, in the fact that you sort of either fall into the executive mayor side or the council manager side, and it's going to become really tough to blend the two.
Yeah.
And it leaves me where I started with, okay, if he is full-time, and I don't disagree with Dave's point that he'll be busy 80 hours, with what we foresee the mayor doing, but I don't know that you're going to be able to dictate the mayor do those things without giving him specific responsibility. So, I'm sort of left with...
Here's where I come in, and it has a lot to do with what you said. You said you were willing to go to either extreme, but nowhere in the middle. And I find myself thinking more along those lines, because what I see us shooting squarely for is something in the middle that I can't figure out. But what I do see on it is I see that we're going to call this person full-time. We're going to give them a salary commensurate with full-time, commensurate with that we want to get a highly qualified person in there full-time. So that means a pretty reasonable salary, and it's not just salary. We're going to have to give them a budget to be able to do the things they want to do in an office. It has to have power, and I don't see any power. I don't see any power.
I don't think we elected any power in doing that.
Exactly, and in which case, I don't think we're going to get anybody. I don't think we're going to get the person who we think we're going to get, because no one with those types of qualifications is going to want this job when it has no power. And so I think we just cut the legs out from this position, because no one's going to. We're not going to get, I think, the candidate who we envision to ever run.
Without really what you're suggesting.
But without giving them, it's not salary. These people, the person who I would see running for this is not running for it for salary, because the person who I see, who I'd want as a mayor, would make 5 times more money in the private sector. And since they're going to have to do this full-time, they're going to have to leave that private sector job. So the fact that they're going to come in and make a quarter of their salary is just ridiculous if they had no authority.
And that's something I thought about too. It's almost going to have to be a retired person, because you're not going to get anybody, because you're not going to be able to pay them probably $70,000, $80,000 a year. It's probably going to be way lower than that. So,
I think it could be. I mean, out in a budget of $22 million.
But also,
I'm not
though,
worried
then that
about
person, when re-election time comes around, they're going to have to wonder if they're going to have a job the next day.
Oh, every mayor does that.
Well,
they,
so do I, by the
way.
That's one of the reasons it is.
You said about highly qualified. Bill Stafford does come to mind, and he was an electrician. So, by highly qualified, what do you mean?
I don't know what I mean by highly qualified, and I'm not sure that I could give a definition of that, because I think every mayor is going to bring something unique to the position. So I think, qualifications are going to be what the voters decide. I'm thinking someone who has experience.
Some of these charters have a degree written into them.
Well, not for the mayor. Not for
Not
mayor.
from elected officials.
What I just read to you is that I did.
Yeah, that was
That was
from the website.
Yeah.
That was.
But it was also a bachelor's degree.
Yeah.
Or
So
that's
it's
kind
Coming
of,
out of the age
that's kind of low.
of residency, there's not too much else that you can put candidates.
IQ maybe.
Well,
No, I'm just.
Yeah, I think that
Residence
there's
age.
your Indian buddy again,
So it's a 4-3 decision, and I'm okay being on the 3 side of that. But that's what it is, and so I think we need to think: is that really, as long as that's the way we're really going, I'm going to be okay with that. But that's
Well, here's what-
After a
here's
couple
what
of
I
weeks of
think-
reflection, this is what I see.
But that's why we're here, and that's why you go through the process, and we may need to modify it over time. What I would suggest where we are is, I think this was a worthwhile exercise, at least in your checklist. It was a worthwhile exercise to try and get everybody on the same page and have a real solid understanding as we're focusing on this issue of where we are now and starting to discuss where we might want to be. What I think to get us over this hurdle, the next step is we analyze what we're identifying as these shortcomings in empowering this mayor and determine if we can create language in the proposed charter that will address that, or if we have to move away from it. But I don't think any of us have made an effort yet to sort of cobble that out and say, here's how we want to define it. And if somebody can put something on the table, sort of as you did here, we might be able to come to a consensus to say, here's where we want to go, or at least have more solid direction on it. And what I'm saying is, you mentioned a few minutes ago, Richard, maybe we can go the other way.
Well, I mean, I
Sort of
think
strip those job duties out.
Yeah, I mean, what we talked about last time was either starting from the mayor as part of council, and how can we give them more power. I think today's exercise showed that may be difficult. The other way that we could have gone, that we chose not to last time, was make the mayor the executive. Okay, now you have Allentown as an example of a mayor has all the power and very little checks and balances. How can you maybe bring that to the middle with more checks and balances, but work from the executive side and bring it back a little bit with more oversight from council. I think there was more flexibility on that direction than there is on the council.
And that can make it a little more
Man.
attractive for somebody who might be interested in kind of coming out for that job.
But, I also stated last time that I think the most important thing here is that we give the city the flexibility of the home rule charter and not necessarily have the mayor be some divisive issue that doesn't ultimately get the charter approved. So I was okay with going with something very similar to what we currently have in the effort of putting something to the voters that they'll ultimately approve to give the more, I don't think the mayor is the biggest goal here isn't the mayor. The biggest goal here is to get a home rule charter approved.
I agree.
So if you put something so divisive that it gets elected down because the executive mayor is just too far out of the box, I'm willing to go a little bit more where it's just tweaks on what we currently have as far as the structure.
Yeah, if we're shooting in the middle, there are the two extremes, and I think the middle is what Easton did. But what
Except for the fact they gave him a vote.
on council.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. But other than that, I mean,
I'm sure Mayor Pulaski would love to have a vote on council in addition to all the power that he
Oh, sure. And I don't want to go over it all because we did this already.
Yeah.
But there were some unique powers that Easton gave short of doing full executive, and I think it kind of works and they're set. But we didn't even go that far, and so.
But what I'm suggesting is, let's give ourselves a homework assignment to do that, put something together that we can try and cobble out for next meeting.
Put something together to add power for the
Well,
mayor.
I think we should not focus on the power. I think we should focus on activities, leadership skills, decision-making, political skills, responsibilities as opposed to power.
Ultimately,
Because it's not a power trip for the mayor.
I agree, but when given any specific issue, we always chose, the whole council should have approval of that. The whole, anytime we talked about any specific issue, it was no, the whole council should have say in it.
That's what I mean.
Even though we're
If the mayor
saying
has no power,
no, but
then
even though we're saying
why
that we
pretend he does?
Well, I would say
That's
that
great.
the
Let's-
reason I said that is because we had already decided that the mayor was part of council. Had that decision still been on the table, I might have changed, I might have.
I don't disagree with you.
That is absolutely true. I was giving my checks and whatever based on the fact that we
he's part of
said
council.
we were. Yeah.
And I agree with that as well. I mean, I was as well, because a lot of these would be different answers if we were doing an executive mayor.
Yeah, and you're right to not call it power. It's you know, I get back to in order to get the mayor, like I said, I ability to lead the city somewhere. You know, I mean, that's what someone's gonna do this for, is they have the desire
I mean,
to lead the city somewhere.
One of the things, and I don't even know where you enumerate this, but one of the things our previous mayor said is he didn't himself own a car or an office. You know, I don't even know if you write that into the charter, but nothing that we've done so far says that the new mayor position would even have that. You know, now he's full-time, I guess they've got to give him somewhere to sit, but.
Well, I think we can write that in.
Yeah, I mean, it's just,
He has an office, how about it?
There's always been an
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
are we saying
or
that
staff,
after we've had this
or
lengthy
yes.
discussion, that maybe we need to rethink our starting point?
I'm not sure. I think we can still go on to the city. I think that working our way down the list, going on to the city manager, will give some more definition to what the mayor's interaction with that person would be. I think as we work through that city council as well, which we've sort of already done here, I think working through each of those will continue to refine what, if anything, the mayor will have. The one thing I would, also to help Larry out, the one thing I think we should do is somehow try to pick one of these. You know, what I'm going to go back and do is read our lists of checks and see which one of these maybe most closely matches, so we can start to sit here and read one paragraph after another and say, this sounds right for us. I mean, we need to really get to some framework of, okay, we're going to use this one as a starting point. We know everything here. We know this is 80% good. Okay, now let's figure out the other 20% that we want to add or subtract from some other charter. But we need to pick one of these as the rough outline.
Well, I haven't changed my mind. I'm fine with a full-time, well-paid mayor. Now, it's a matter of what does the mayor do?
That's exactly right.
I have no doubt that we can come up with enough substantive activity.
Every one of these
just-
orange tabs is what the mayor does in each of these charters. Pick one to start from.
Can you
That's all I'm
really
asking for.
define that though? Because there'd be no way of firing the mayor. You're almost have to.
Yeah.
Every 4 years,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's really going to be up to the electorate
Yeah.
and whoever wants to fight it out for the mayor position, because you're going to have X amount of people saying, I will do this.
Yeah.
And who does the electorate believe? Whose ideas does the electorate go with? Are you sort of getting into a situation where you're trying to do the job of the electorate?
Well, I think each elected official that comes in is gonna have their own agenda. I mean, they're gonna have something that they're gonna focus on, and that's what they're gonna sell their 4 years of being mayor on. And I think you get into identifying every little individual thing that person's gonna do, you know, they're gonna come in and make that job whatever it is.
Right.
And then in 4 years, I guess we get to decide whether or not he or she did a good job.
Well, but I think when you get into the duties and powers, the executive one is where they do get into much more length, because you really need to define the difference between the city manager, city whatever it is, and the mayor on the executive ones. My point's been that on the city manager's mayor's council, it's not well defined.
No, it's not. And like you said, we gave them a vote on council, so that pretty much dictates some of the stuff already. We agreed last time that we weren't gonna let the mayor hire and fire the city manager, so that already dictates some other things. So some of the things based on the decisions we already made, and maybe, but what I was saying earlier was, now some of this stuff has come to light, saying that, was that, you know, what we really wanted to happen now that we've seen some of the, you know, the onslaught of what happened with the voting last time.
well, but that's back to Richard's point of, if we just keep going through
Yeah.
manager and council now, we should get to a point where we think we're all comfortable. But I also appreciate the fact that this is sort of a sideshow to the whole prospect of getting the charter done. We can't get bogged down too much in it. So if we plow through, what's next, manager and then council, as I was called.
Actually, I think council was on the agenda tonight.
We sort of went over last week and pushed it into this week, knowing that, well, I mean, we sort of defined the council by not defining the mayor. We pretty much gave mostly all the choice to the council anyways. So we sort of defined the council tonight in some way. But now I think we need to actually, you know, now that you've got to write 2 pages worth of specifics, which doesn't make sense for us to sit here and draft the language from scratch. We need to pick one or two of these that most closely match the decisions we've made that we can use for next time as the basis. Then start reading the specific, like that specific list I just read there a minute ago. Is there something they missed? And point to another one where maybe I really like this provision of defining the mayor from one of the other charters. I'm a little bit hesitant to go into uncharted territory, but we shall get there eventually, I'm sure.
Well, I mean, the powers that I see listed, the ones that I have with him, I don't have as many as you have, but the powers that I see listed for the mayor are pretty much what we just said. I mean, they give silly things like execute, enforce, and obey the ordinances of the city, and that's, I don't know. I think those are just words. Inform the council once a year on the financial general conditions of the city. We're done. This is Wilkes-Barre, by the way. Provide council with such information concerning finances and general conditions of the city as requested. Submit proposed legislation to council.
That's the executive mayor, by the way, though.
What's that?
This is an executive mayor, by the way.
No, I don't think so. Oh, you're right. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry.
You're going to get a lot more examples when you go in the executive. When you go to the council, mayor's council,
It's pretty vague and.
it'll just be
It's just
pretty much what
we've already.
the definition of the mayor is currently from 39 city code.
Yeah.
So are we back to where we said, how much authority does that person already have then?
Isn't the case, you have set council meeting agenda. You gave that to the mayor, that's unusual. That's a power that it usually doesn't have in a council manager. And that's a lot of power if you think about it. If he doesn't want something passed that night, it doesn't get on the agenda. I mean, that's pretty much unheard of in the way it's set up now.
In the executive forms, they almost always do that. That would be a power of an executive
I'm
mayor.
just saying, you gave that to the
I know, but
mayor.
I'm saying that's
Right,
in
right.
keeping with what.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying, it's a very
Executive mayor.
powerful duty you gave right there to the mayor. Because if he doesn't want that ordinance up, it's not coming up,
Anything off the agenda.
It's just gonna be that way.
I just gained the mayor a lot of friends.
What's that?
Gained the mayor a lot of friends.
Yeah, they're gonna have to convince the mayor to put it on the agenda.
And right now, they just have to convince the city manager, or
That's
he controls
exactly,
the agenda.
the city manager puts it, here's the agenda, and it's,
But if he doesn't want an ordinance, he can keep it off, or the city?
no, the city council say, we want that on the agenda, and it goes on the agenda. But now you have a mayor saying, this will be the agenda.
Well, I would imagine that a meeting can always deviate from an agenda if there's a majority vote to do that, right?
I don't know, if it's not on the agenda, I don't know how you get it on the agenda.
During public comment.
Yeah, well, public
Wow,
comment.
we've done a.
Our goal of meetings is
That's
deviation.
something we need to check.
Take 4 votes. Yeah.
Yeah.
You could probably override it with 4 votes, but that's gonna be contentious.
Well, yeah, but if there's the
Well, I'm
votes
not saying
for,
to take it away, I'm just
Yeah.
saying you did give
Right.
this mayor a power that's pretty much unheard of in a council manager form of government.
no, I understand that, but at the same time, I don't think it's that much of one.
Well, it is.
Yeah, you think so?
If, in practicality, I agree. Yeah.
It also comes down to some comment earlier, it was Bev, everyone's gonna bring their own skill set to how far they can take any office. I disagree with some of the things some other former mayors have said about how far this can go. So
we're looking for Mr. Wonderful.
Yeah, well, right.
Or Mr. Wonderful.
You can have a mayor who can come in and say, yeah, I control the agenda. Hey, Mr. Manager, go ahead and put it together, and I'll let you know if I like it.
Yep.
Versus a mayor say, I control the agenda, here's what it's going to be. And I don't like Councilman so-and-so, and I'll keep his ordinance off of here. So, depending on the personality of the elected official, it can still go quite a broad range. I think the current job had some ability to extend the range, just not as far as I thought it should.
But it wouldn't behoove him to make enemies on council because he needs them. If, in fact, he's doing a job and he's building economic development and doing all that, he needs their votes to move his project forward too.
Would it be fair to say that perhaps the problem isn't that the mayor lacked authority as much as the mayor lacked flexibility by not having an office in City Hall, by not having a city vehicle, by not having to pay?
I would say the word be influenced, but I just brought up. I mean, I would think that if you are at City Hall and the city manager is also at City Hall, that you're going to have a day-to-day working relationship. And even though you need to, you know, it'd be much different if your office every day was in City Hall and you work directly with all the department heads and around them. And even though they didn't have any direct authority, there's going to obviously be a level of influence that would exist there that would be beyond what a regular city councilman would have.
And the flexibility to go to Harrisburg when needed, to go do research in the northeast part of the state when needed, or wherever. Just to add that flexibility to the mayor position, and to fund that position to a point where he or she could do what they needed to do.
They have to be effective in that position.
Yes.
In order to be effective, you're going to have the right.
Well, and I think that goes also to the budget issue. If if we're saying the city manager is going to set the budget, he would have to give the mayor his budget to do those things, and any staff that the mayor may have, a secretary or whatever, that would work in conjunction with the mayor's office. So he's going to have to get the city manager to agree to give it to him, and he's going to have to get the rest of council to agree to approve it. So they can cut him off the knees if they choose to.
But he'll have time to do that too.
Yeah, well, time.
He'll have time to get his ducks in a row and quarterback the necessary legislation through. And a decent, logical mayor would be able to do that. Should be able to get to 4 if it's something that's decent. That would be, something that's not out there too far.
I agree that it will likely happen in practice. Trying to write it in or ensure it or enumerate those powers is going to be difficult or unwise.
What was that?
Which could.
Yeah. You're not going to say what they need to do. We're going to have they need to do
I see the mayor as a good politician, needs to be a good leader, good speaker, who would be tasked with bringing resources to the community, perhaps from other places. And the city manager runs the city. Now, I don't know how you delineate all that, and I'm not sure I want to.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think everyone here at the table agrees with the vision. We can write an objective. We can write an objective. Here's the objective of the mayor.
Well, if you're making it too hard, you're right.
With the president, what does he have of the U.S.? What does he have the most control over? Foreign relations. That's really what you're saying here. You want him to be able to go out to Harrisburg and do what he needs to do for the city, bring back the money or whatever it is, right?
Yeah, that's what I heard. The mayors that came and spoke to us, they appeared to be good politicians. They knew how to network. They know how to go and get stuff.
And they were visionaries. Like they pictured something and they built that collaboration between the community and the city departments and the state, and they pulled all of that collaboration together to make that stuff happen.
The uncharted territory that we're going into is, can they do all that while not being the executive of the city?
I agree. And that's what I've been
Oh, I
saying.
think
Are
they
they going
can,
to be
yeah.
able
Well,
to do it?
Absolutely.
I'm just saying that's the uncharted territory we're going into, because all the other ones have both
Right.
that power and are the
Those
executive
success
of their
stories that you
cities.
heard were not on the ones that we're building.
I
They
mean,
were
a
built
lot of
on
these,
executive.
the ones that we just printed out, a lot of these mayor and council, they're from places that have populations of 6,000, 5,000, 6,000, 14,000. I mean, that's the frame of reference, because everyone else who's in the 40,000, 50,000, 100,000 range has an executive mayor. So this is the bridge that we're trying to create.
And it seems like that visionary, what that actually requires, and And I don't know that in order to have that visionary policy to make that happen, I don't think you'd have to appoint the city manager. You know, I don't necessarily think that you have to be able to do that. I don't know that you have to be able to have a lot of these other things that we're saying council would do. I don't know that the mayor would have to have that ability. But what I do think the mayor has to have is, when you have this visionary, this politician who's doing this, I think it's part and parcel of why someone would actually go and want to do the job.
Yeah, well, that
Is there's no question at the end of the day, they were the one who made it happen. You know, they did it, and you know, and they chalk it off as maybe going on to another job position, and it may be in politics, you know, going and if they're part of council, I'm not sure that they have that. Yes, I was the one who made this happen.
I think that this is a safe way to go in the fact that they can't screw up. They're not executives. They can't screw up the city too bad. Yeah, they're not in control of that many things. It takes 4 to do anything major within the city. They can possibly be this visionary person. I think the worst case scenario is you end up with somebody who gets paid a lot to sit around and have no responsibilities and not really do anything. I think that's the worst case scenario, which I think is in some ways a better alternative than to get paid a lot to have the power to wreck everything on top of that.
That's a good way to do it.
So I think that it can
What is
possibly be
Harrisburg?
the best of both worlds.
Anybody know off the top of their head, what is Harrisburg?
What?
What kind of mayor?
Oh, strong mayor, exactly.
Because remember, it was the strong mayor that really set the deck in motion and killed the town.
In Allentown, they're at the beginning of their foray into this, but they just sold or restocked their water authority. I mean, it sounds good now. Is that those sorts of decisions, are they good that many years down the road? So.
Leadership's a terrible burden. I mean, you can be a decent leader in a given context and come out really well, and if the context is not appropriate for your leadership style or whatever, you're complete failure. It's really a toss-up. But I think what we agreed to last time, and what I hear we're tentatively re-agreeing to, is to have a full-time mayor, well-paid, and do some stuff that is good for the city. Well, I think we ought to write that down.
So 2 F's?
Yeah. Or do you want to spell it S-T-O-U-G-H?
The greatest people and the most successful people are the ones that took risks and that, had the vision and went after it.
That's
And
right.
some of them failed and some of them didn't.
That's correct.
Okay.
Are we clear where we are going next week?
Where are we at? Remind me.
Well, I think we just
Well, I think one of the homework is pick one.
pick a charter to work from, and maybe we can make some recommendations.
And that's a council mayor charter.
Yeah, I think pick a council mayor charter that if we all pick one and we get like 3 of us that pick the same one by chance, that'd be great. We can use that as a starting point.
How about by the end of
maybe.
this week, we can send to Linda some ones that we like, and because otherwise we're all going to come with 7 different versions. And that's
If there's a consensus, then at least we can sort of
Yeah.
read that, and then I agree with that. Then we can come, and if ours doesn't get picked,
Yeah.
whatever the contrasting sort of provisions, at least on, I'm not saying the whole way through the charter at this point, but at least on the first 3, which would be the powers of council, the powers of mayor, and the powers of the
We
city
just got a
manager.
whole new stack of charters, right?
Yeah.
Are these
They're the ones
Council
that-
They're
mayor?
mainly the
Links
council
them.
manager.
They're all council managers.
Oh, and then we have
All the
Easton.
early ones we had were the people that came in and testified, which were typically executive.
The Easton wasn't though, right? Easton's the council mayor.
It's council manager, but with a lot more power to the mayor. And, well, I think both. And so is
I still like that.
there's one in here,
So delineate what my choices are.
and the other one that we just got is relatively similar. It's Pittston. The mayor there is both has a lot of powers. Like here, shall set the agenda for council meetings, shall have the authority and power, shall be direct supervisor to the city administrator.
How old's that?
How old is it? Right here in the front.
And that's a lot of it.
Since-
Wasn't it in the nineties?
Is that just, no, that can't be. 2013.
They just certified
They
it.
might have been, yeah.
Very
It
good.
was 90s.
December, oh, you're saying this is something else? It says December 12th, 2012.
Pretty good.
Well, maybe it is.
Doesn't that read pretty?
That's what I think.
November 6th, 2012 is when the referendum was on the ballot.
November too,
Doing that.
yes.
That's what it is.
Do you know the population of that Pittston?
You said no, it's not on the list.
That's possible.
No, right there, 7,739.
Size of Holmesburg.
I mean, if you read through the powers of mayor on that one, it's, you know, right there it says, shall be the direct supervisor of the city administrator. So he's on council, but he's also the direct supervisor of the
For the city manager.
city manager.
So we can't use that one because.
I mean, you can use
You
it as a
can
fair
use
contrast.
it.
but
Use it.
So who appoints the,
Alright.
who appoints the
Alright.
manager?
I didn't get that far. Shall
Sounds like you
be,
said.
city administrator shall be hired and appointed by the city council and then chosen and married. So it's appointed by city council, but he's the person who directly supervises it.
Recommendations, please, to Linda, hopefully by the end of the week.
3.
Whatever you want.
Oh, I thought you said pick 3.
He said pick three.
No, I said
Pick 3.
1 or 2, whatever. Or rank them,
You say,
first, second, third.
I really like this. Whatever, if you want to do one or whatever.
Yeah, me too.
Just so there's interest. Right? Time's up.
Yes.
Time's up.